this positive and encouraging conversation about resilience, three-time cancer survivor. How do you define resilience? And can you please describe what your journey with resilience has been over the years?
So, first of all, thank you. I am very honored to be part of your story that you are telling to everyone. So, for me, resilience is keeping going. Sometimes when you really don't want to, you want to crawl back under the covers. You don't want to go to that meeting, you don't want to take that call. And as I tell some people sometimes when they're, a little whiny, and I get whiny too, buck up. Right? But but there, saying that though, there are times where we do need to crawl back under the covers, where we do need to say, not today. And I think that's been the biggest thing that I have learned, especially on my cancer journey, is it's okay to say no. And sometimes that is the absolute strongest thing you can do. And maybe it's that I need to take a nap, or I'm not going to volunteer to do that. Whatever it is, resilient is, what do you need to do to keep going?
That's a great definition. And it means that resilience can look like different things at different times
Right.
based on what you need,
Hmm.
what is the most resilient thing. As I was just listening to you, I was thinking sometimes crawling under the covers might be the most resilient thing that
Right.
you could do.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, right. And telling others, "Hey, I need a break. Leave me alone." Not answering your phone, whatever it is, because sometimes resilience is building up your strength again,
Yeah.
right? And so taking the nap, saying no, whatever it is, that's being resilient also.
How do you think of resilience? For example, I think of it as
Mhm,
something that is living,
mhm,
and that means it needs energy. Anything
right.
that's going to live,
Mhm, mhm,
and therefore it's a question of how am I spending the energy?
mhm,
Where am I gaining energy for
mhm,
my resilience? How am I
mhm,
preserving energy?
mhm.
Sounds like you're thinking of it in a similar way.
Right. And I love that you said preserving energy,
Yeah.
because I think that's one of the things when we're saying no, when we're taking the nap, when we're
Yeah.
doing whatever, we're preserving our energy in order to be able to go forward with whatever it is. I was at a big event that I volunteer for, big dog show, and it was actually 13 days that I was there, and there were a couple of times where I said, "Go into my RV, folks. The world will not
Yeah.
end. You all can do whatever needs to be done and take care of whatever needs to be done, but I need to go lay down for a while."
Yeah.
And nobody said, "Oh no, you can't go." They all went, "Sure." And so that's part of it, is knowing that other people are going to be there to help.
Yes. Yes. Very good. So let me pause just for a minute to say welcome to Plan to Be Your Best Live. And for those of you watching or watching the recording of this, so glad you're here. We're here to answer your questions. Any questions for Deb or for myself? We'll be talking about resilience. We'll be talking about encouragement. We'll be talking about the highs and lows and twists and turns of a journey. I'll share some thoughts, and some of these questions for you, Deb, will come from the pages of the book in progress,
Mhm.
Plan to Be Your Best as You Navigate Pain. And if we're connecting for the first time, hi, I'm Rick Cram. And Deb Krier, you're a three-time cancer survivor,
Mhm.
but so much more than that. You help
Right.
other people, and you are a leadership coach. You're an advocate. You help even doctors in this world, in terms of in the world of cancer,
Mhm.
cancer treatment,
Mhm.
cancer care, and so forth. When did you make the decision to, if in the way I try to explain it, I'm not wasting the pain. I'm trying to
Mhm.
use
Mhm.
what I've
Right.
learned about resilience to encourage others. When did you make a decision to become active in this way?
I got pushed into it.
Oh,
So my business coach, the wonderful Kathleen Caldwell, knows all about my journey, and it has been really bumpy. But I was talking with her about business things, right? She's my business coach, and we were on a Zoom, and she shook her finger at me, and I went, "Oh dear," and she said, "You did not." go through what you've gone through without using it to help others. And I said, yeah, but I don't want to be cancer girl. And she kind of
Mhm.
laughed and said, yeah, but you need to. And I went, no. But she gradually wore me down, and I always have been one of those people that volunteers, that helps, things like that. So this was not, it wasn't totally foreign to me. But she kept kind of saying, when are you going to do this, when are you going to do this? And so I finally decided to start trying not to die.live, which is an initiative to help anyone who is on a cancer journey, whether they have cancer themselves or they are supporting someone who has cancer. And so we launched that. Oh gosh, it's been 3.5, 4 years ago. And that, I love doing that. It is for, as I said, for anyone who is on their cancer journey. And then, late last year, early this year, I decided to see, what the heck is a cancer coach?
Mhm.
Is that even something? And it's very new. You will not find a lot of cancer coaches if you go to Google. And so I thought, well, either people don't want it or
Yeah.
there's an opportunity. And I chose to say, okay, let's think of it as an opportunity. So I took several certifications. One is from the Cancer Wellness Institute. It was a 12-week program, so it is very detailed. I also have certifications as a grief coach, a happiness coach, because that's just as important on this journey, if not more so. And then
Yeah.
several other things, and launched our cancer coaching strategic advisor service in May.
Very good. The way you first described that, you didn't want to be cancer girl,
Mhm,
reminds me of something that you wrote about how when you were first diagnosed,
mhm.
I think there was a kind of rejection of
Right.
being told
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
Can you take us back to that? And
Sure.
what was it that you said?
Yeah. So it was a little over 10 years ago was when I first received the initial diagnosis. And I looked at my doctor and I said, I'm sorry, that's not on my schedule. And she looked at me like, you don't get to vote.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? I do get to vote. I get to vote on how I'm going to deal with this.
Yeah.
And because we're never raising our hand, right? Hello, want to get sick, and or whatever it is. But it is our decision on how we are going to deal with it. And that comes back to resilience, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to deal with whatever it is? And I was initially told that my cancer was what they call stage 0. Easy peasy, we're not going to do any treatment, no surgery, anything like that. We're just going to kind of watch it. And so we did for several months. And then did some further testing, and they said, well, golly, it's actually already spread. So I went from stage 0 diagnosis to stage 3. And then several months later, they actually said, no, it's stage 4, which is the highest, the worst, the whatever the heck you want to call it, type of diagnosis you can have. It's not typically considered curable, but it can definitely go away and maybe never even raise its ugly little head again. But
Hmm.
yeah, when you have stage 4, you always are dealing with the fact that you have cancer.
Yeah. And in fact, when I read how you wrote, I was unwilling to process the
Hmm.
news
Hmm.
of the diagnosis.
Right.
It occurred to me that, or at least it seemed to me, that is the beginning.
Hmm.
That's where you began, where we
Hmm.
might all begin
Hmm.
the process, even
Hmm.
if the process, the first step is rejection.
Right. And I had 0 symptoms, which I don't know if that made it better or worse in this whole
Mm.
process, because I was like, well, no, I can't have stage 3 and then stage 4 cancer because I have no symptoms. I felt perfectly fine.
Mhm.
All of those things. Maybe when we do have some type of symptom, whether it's pain, whether it's you can feel a tumor, there's so many things that should be alerting us to the fact that, ooh, there's something going on here. Maybe it is a little easier when we get that diagnosis. Not that it's easy, right? But
Mhm.
once you know what's going on, then you can deal with it. It's the uncertainty that,
Yeah.
gee, there might or might not be something going on here, or maybe it's just all in your head, then you can deal with it. And I think that, so it's kind of a relief to actually know here's what's going on.
Yes. There's this wonderful quote by the a business, I believe the CEO of Herman Miller, maybe the son of the founder of
Hmm. Hmm.
Herman Miller,
Hmm.
that the first step of what a leader needs to do is define reality.
Right. Hmm. Hmm.
How was it when you received the second and third diagnosis of cancer?
So when they said, "Hey, you've got stage 3," that was when I cried.
Hmm.
And I'm not somebody who cries. Pain obviously will make you cry, but um, you know, and now I tell people I know just enough to be dangerous. Many years ago, I worked for the American Cancer Society, and I worked for an oncologist. So I recognize those words like metastatic, right? I saw
Hmm.
it in my online chart. That's how I found out that my cancer had spread. Not, that anybody had told me. Needless to say, I was a little unhappy at my doctor.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it really is kind of one of those things where you're blindsided no matter what.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
when your brain, your heart, your soul, all of those things are saying there's something going on, when you are told for sure, you're like, no, no, it really is something
Mhm.
else.
Mhm.
And then when they told me that it was stage 4, I was, whatever. It was just kind of another step in the process. That didn't really bother me at all because I knew that there was going to be something. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, fine. What's next?
Mhm. Mhm. That word "fine" stands out because I know you speak on and coach people
Hmm.
on the question of "Am I fine?"
Right.
or "I'm
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
fine,
Hmm.
but that's okay."
Hmm. Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Elaborate on that if you would.
Well, so for me, fine is one of those bad words that starts with F, right?
Yeah.
Um, and and we shouldn't use it. Like if I say, "Hey, Rick, how are you doing today?" I'm fine.
Yeah.
Now it's
It's a
okay. It's the catch-all, right? I could be doing good. I could be ready to run a marathon. I could be ready to keel over, but I say, "Oh, I'm fine."
yeah.
Now it's okay to tell, the barista at Starbucks, I'm fine. When they say, "How you doing today?"
Mhm.
"Oh, fine," right? Because it's not that they don't care, but they really don't care, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they certainly don't want to hear, "Oh my gosh, this is what's going on." But when your medical people ask you how you feel, it's imperative that you are honest with them. And it's also very important when the people who you care about or are associated with ask you,
Mhm.
because they sometimes they're just kind of asking to ask, "Oh, how you doing today?" Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But when they are asking because they truly want to know,
Yeah.
then it's okay to go into more detail. I
Yeah.
typically tell people I'm hunky dory. I don't know where that came from.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think my grandmother used to say it, but it was funny when I was in the doctor the other day, and I actually am still in active treatment. I go in every 21
Mhm.
days, and they said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Hunky dory," and she kind
Yeah.
of laughed and she said, "Oh yeah, I know. If you don't say that, there's a problem."
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, find whatever works for you, but don't just say I'm fine.
Yeah.
And see, there's a tone, right? I'm fine.
Right. Right. Reminds me of Seinfeld, who one of his routines, he talks about his relationship with his wife,
Hmm.
and his wife says, "I don't like that tone," and he
Hmm.
said, "Tone? I didn't think I had a
There's no
tone."
tone. Mhm, mhm, right.
Well,
And of
one of
course,
my
every husband knows that if you ask your wife something and she says, "It's fine," run
yeah,
away and hide.
right, right, disappear,
Mhm,
disappear.
mhm,
My pain management doctor makes a practice of asking me multiple times, "So how are you?
mhm. Right.
How are you?"
Mhm,
And it's another way of saying or asking, "How are you really?"
mhm, right. And really is that important
Yeah,
word, right?
right, right. Oh, you advocate for people to talk freely and openly,
Mhm,
and with the right people, the
mhm,
right time, and
mhm,
perhaps even in the right ways.
mhm.
to express it, to talk about your journey as
Mhm.
part of the processing of strengthening resilience, I
Right.
believe.
Mhm.
How
Yeah.
do you coach, for example, business leaders who
Mhm.
you coach who have cancer?
Right. Well, that's
Um,
tricky
yeah.
because they don't want to tell people that they have cancer, that there's something, and I'm
Mhm.
putting this in my air quotes for people who just listen, that there's something wrong with them, right?
Oh,
Even though now the stats are 1 in 3, 1 in 4. I mean, but you know, a business leader does not want people to think that that they can't do their job. That if you've got employees, maybe they're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job." All of these various things, and so they don't talk about it.
mhm.
And now I'm very open, probably more so than most people, but I do see it as a way to educate folks. But yeah, there are others who they don't ever say a word about it, and of course it's their choice.
Mhm.
But it is very tricky in a workplace, because if an employee is going through something like this, it's not like you can ask. Now you can be a
Yeah.
little general, and but if they choose to not say anything, you can't take it any further. Or more importantly, if say you're the HR person, the boss, the whoever, and they've confided in you that they have cancer, and then have said, but you can't tell anyone else. You
Mhm.
have to go by that. And of course, we all do, right? If
Mhm.
somebody says, hey, this is what's going on, but please don't share this information. But there are actually laws where, you can't share it in a workplace. So it's one of those delicate challenges. I do tell, especially leaders, that they should consider sharing. Now, they don't have to go into much detail,
Mhm.
but we're not stupid people. And so, if you see that your boss, your business owner, your friend has something going on, if they don't share, well, we make it up. And we always make it up in the worst possible way. So it's okay as that leader to say, I'm going through something right now. I'll tell you as much as I can, but I might need your help. And then people are like, what can we do? As opposed to, Bob's been coming in late every day. We think Bob has a drinking problem, right?
Mhm.
We just
Mhm.
make it up. And so, but you can just say going through something. Doesn't have to be much more than that.
Diana Fritz and I had a
Hmm.
fast,
Hmm.
amazing conversation a
Hmm.
couple of weeks ago, and she made a comment such as this, that when there is a void in communication,
Hmm. Hmm.
distrust will fill that gap.
Right. Hmm. Right.
And it makes me wonder, elaborate on that. And what do business leaders who
Hmm.
have cancer,
Hmm.
what do they need?
Right. Well, there is the saying, nature abhors a vacuum. And my career is in corporate communications. So when, I've dealt with situations where maybe you knew that the company was going to be acquired by somebody, or, all these things. We really do. We make it up. And then of course, the tricky thing is people don't know what's gossip and what's not gossip.
Mhm.
So it is, you have to deal with that challenge, and I understand why. I felt the same way when I was very first diagnosed. I owned my own company, and I thought, what do I tell my clients, and how much do I tell them? And so I was very open with my clients, partially
Mhm.
because there are times where they can't reach me, or I'm not going
Mhm.
to respond, right? And so I tell them, I will get back to you as soon as I can. If there is a true emergency, here's how to reach me, right? If there's something
Mhm.
that they, and I tell them that. But it's interesting because part of me is like, if they're like, ugh, now they're going to have one of two reactions. What can we do to help? Or,
Mhm.
you need to go deal with this. Now, some of that might be well meaning, right? You need to focus on you. Or it might be, we need to find somebody else who can do the work for us, right?
Mhm.
And so if they're that, then you probably don't want to be working with them or for them anyway. right? If they're, if
Mm,
they're just,
yeah,
you can't do this, we don't want to work with you.
yeah.
But if they're saying, we want you to go focus on your health, what, and there's obviously varying ways to respond to that, but for me, work gives me something for my brain to focus on,
Mhm, mhm.
and and goals, and things like that. So I'm perfectly fine with working through all of this. And it's funny, hospitals and doctors offices now all have really good Wi-Fi, right? You walk in now,
Yeah,
mine, any place I go, my phone automatically connects. It's like, oh, we're here again.
yeah.
um but they all have good Wi-Fi, and I've been in the hospital sometimes for a week and nobody knew, because I just kept working merrily along.
Oh,
And so it is, but people do want to help, and so it is okay to say, can I have you do this project, can I have you, because, and the cool thing is, what you're doing is you're showing that you trust them, you trust that you hired the right person, or you're working with the right person for the job. Now, don't just say go do, right? Because that's not good. But empower them to work with you to maybe take things over, and then when things are all better, hopefully they do get all better, right? Wow, you might be able to take a vacation without everybody calling you every 10 minutes, or all these things. Plus, your employees, and your consultant, whoever it is, they like that you trusted them.
yeah.
And so it's going to be better for the workplace.
So, when it comes to needs, you identified a few things there,
Mhm,
including trust,
mhm, mhm,
collaboration, support,
mhm,
uh, and the need for distractions.
mhm.
What are some of the other needs that you maybe found for yourself that
Mhm.
you hadn't recognized before?
Right.
Or if we all have needs,
Mhm,
but people in pain have more needs.
mhm, mhm.
People dealing with
Right.
cancer have
Mhm,
more needs.
mhm,
Um, we all have questions.
mhm,
People have a lot of questions.
mhm,
When we're dealing with the kinds
mhm,
of things that you and I are dealing with,
mhm,
we've got a lot more
mhm,
questions.
mhm.
El- Elaborate on the different needs.
Sometimes I need you, and most of the time, I need you to treat me like everything is okay.
Hmm, hmm.
I am not my diagnosis. It's just part of what's there. And so I don't need you to be giving me the pity party, the looks, the
Hmm.
sighs. I was talking with somebody else about this earlier this week, and what we really don't need, and none of us, anytime you're in, a situation like this, please don't tell the person, oh, I know so and so. They went through this and this and this, and oh, they
Hmm.
died.
Yeah,
Right? We don't need that. We also don't need to hear about everything that went wrong, or, even the things, because when someone has a diagnosis, whatever it is, the similarities with anyone else end right there, because we are all individual. How
right.
we deal with it, how, medicine, things like that, it's all very different for each individual person. And so I don't even need to hear how you did.
Right.
One of the things people were like, oh, well, when you're sick, you need ginger. Ginger, and
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I am not a ginger fan. It's gonna make me even more nauseated. And so I didn't need to hear that from somebody.
Right.
But we do need encouragement. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just need somebody to say, I'm sorry this happened to you.
Right. Right. The two needs that I've seen
Mhm,
for people dealing with
mhm,
pain,
mhm,
whether it's physical pain, such as I
mhm,
experience, or
mhm,
they're grieving, or it's excessive
mhm,
stress, that the best encouragement, the best kind of response
mhm,
is something that creates a connection,
mhm, mhm,
that is creates a bond. One of my
mhm,
favorite phrases to use is "I'm a holder of hope for you,"
mm. Oh, I love
and
that.
that kind of connection creating, as opposed to for example, when pain can be, or there can be various aspects of
Mhm,
the journey that's very
mhm.
overwhelming, that anything that's said, like try this or try that,
Right.
it's
Mhm,
one more thing on top of
mhm,
something
mhm,
that feels like it's about to break.
mhm. Right.
So that becomes
Mhm,
a burden.
mhm.
But if
Right.
it's a connection
Mhm,
found in hope and
Mhm.
understanding,
Mhm. Right.
then then there's positive energy that comes from that.
Right. Well, and when someone says, "I'm holding hope for you in my heart," then I
Mhm.
can decide how much more I want to take that conversation. I can just say thank you, or I can say, "Hey, thank you. Today's a really good day," or
Mhm.
right? And that's also what and I love, and that's a much more positive statement than saying I'm sorry, right? Because that's kind of an ooh. But it's funny. I've also found I don't, and this is right. We all are. This is it kind of the yin and the yang, right? I don't want people to completely ignore it
Mhm.
because it is there, it is happening, so it's okay to mention it. One of the things that I had somebody tell me one time is, we are grieving. We're grieving the fact that our life is not what we had wanted it to be.
Mhm.
We're
Mhm.
angry, all of those various things. But someone who had lost a child, which to me has got to be one of the absolute worst things in the world. I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine that. And I don't care if it's a child, as in 5 years old, or 70, right? A parent's not supposed to outlive their child. And so they told me, they said, please always acknowledge it, because if you don't,
Mhm.
it's like
Mhm.
they didn't exist.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Powerful. At
Mhm,
some point, I'm going to post the recording of a
mhm,
conversation I had. It's for my podcast with David Domashek, a dear
mhm,
friend.
mhm,
He and Annie lost Natasha at a very early age,
mhm,
6 or 7, to a
mhm,
brain aneurysm.
mhm,
And some of the things that nurses and others in the
mhm,
hospital said
mhm,
as these are
mhm,
unfolding, or even after
mhm,
she passed,
mhm,
are absolutely horrific, such as,
mhm.
"Oh, I know how you feel. My dog died last week."
Right.
Um,
No, no, no,
right,
no.
right,
Yeah, and it's and so that's obviously why I think a lot of people hesitate to say anything, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I've had people who've told me we didn't know what to say. And
yeah,
I tell them, well, because your silence spoke volumes, and it meant to me that you didn't care. Now, was that
right,
the case? No. But my silly little head, that's what got into it. And so especially when I, was first diagnosed, and I got very, very ill. Was in the hospital for 7 weeks, in and out of ICU,
mm,
in and out of surgery, all sorts of things. And people said we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to say. And I said, well,
yeah,
Hallmark has cards.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because then they're able to say, "Hey, we're thinking about you," without
right,
delving too much into it, right? Because let's be honest, they don't always want to really know. They certainly don't want to know the icky
no,
details. But it's just kind of or if I post about it on Facebook, just click the like button or the care button
How
or whatever.
how would you respond if someone simply said, I'm sorry, I don't have any words. I have no
Mhm,
words. There are no words.
mhm.
Nothing's adequate."
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And depending on who it is, I might go into more
Mhm,
detail.
mhm,
If it's close friend, family member, then I might say more. If it's a business associate, I would probably pretty much just say thank you.
mhm. Yes, yes. If I haven't said it yet, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank
When
you.
we first met,
Hmm.
and had this fantastic conversation, I could
Hmm.
have talked
Hmm.
all day with you.
I know
Um,
we have fun. Hmm.
yes, you've got great energy, and this will probably be the second of many conversations. I'm
Hmm.
looking forward
Hmm.
to them all. How about the different dimensions of life,
Hmm.
and how each one might be affected?
Hmm.
There's the social
Hmm.
dimension, there's the work dimension,
Hmm.
there's the mental
Hmm.
dimension, there's the emotional
Hmm.
dimension, there's the faith dimension,
Hmm.
and so forth. Based on those, which stands
Hmm.
out? Which one of those maybe resonated with you in this moment?
Oh, they're all there. But some are higher, some are lower, right? Based on what
Mhm,
you're going through. I lost a friend this morning. Found out on Facebook that a friend had died, and my first thought was, "Oh dear," right? Just but then it was relief that they were not suffering.
mhm,
And but but yeah, I think we all kind of balance all of those things, and I was talking to, the person's surviving partner, and I said, "It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to
Mhm.
feel relief, and give yourself the grace to feel all of that." And I think that's one of the things is we think, "Ooh, we shouldn't feel that." No,
Mhm.
it's you. You can feel anything you want, and it's perfectly fine. I had somebody one time who told me, when she lost her husband, "I haven't been able to cry. What's wrong with me?"
Mhm.
And I said, "There's nothing wrong
Right.
with you. You will cry when it's the right time."
Yes. Yes. First of all, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you.
And in your grieving and the grieving of the family members, I'm
Mhm,
a holder of hope for you all.
thank you.
Those feelings are real,
Mhm,
and they need to be validated,
mhm,
including those feelings that seem like this doesn't seem right.
right.
If I
Mhm,
haven't cried or I can't cry
mhm, mhm,
just yet, is there something wrong?
mhm,
And the answer is no, no,
mhm,
not at all.
right.
There are so many ways I found I live with agony many times every day now.
Mhm,
It's almost been 6 years since
mm,
the seventh surgery on my left knee.
mhm,
And one word that stood out, uh, I know what it's like to be angry
mhm,
in pain, at
mhm,
the pain, at
mhm.
and even
The
grieving the loss
world.
of comfort, the
Mhm,
world,
mhm,
absolutely. Angry at
mhm,
God.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but since my journey has gone this way,
mhm,
I know what it's like when I was going through surgeries 4, 5, and 6. Um, I was angry. I was angry at God when I was going through the first
mhm,
3 surgeries. Um, but since the 7th surgery and all this daily
mhm,
pain, I think I've been angry for literally once, and it was for less than 60 seconds.
mm,
I
mhm,
partially because of the way I'm processing it.
mhm, mhm,
I've become a lion of
mhm,
intentionality
mm,
to go through this in a
mhm,
different way
mhm,
so that I don't have the anger
mhm.
because the anger consumes
Right. Mhm,
energy.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
just not helpful.
right. And the
What
anger then leads to, what did I do to deserve this? Is it
Mhm,
my fault?
mhm.
I actually had people who told me that how I had been living, I must have brought this on myself.
Oh,
Oh, no,
oh,
I don't talk to them anymore. You
right,
know,
right,
um,
right.
because and we've all seen people who, lung cancer is a great example. Somebody who never smoked, very healthy, and they died of lung
Mhm,
cancer. The
mhm.
person who smoked 2 packs a day and never got sick, right? You
Yeah.
never know all of these things. But I do remember there was one time where I was, being trundled off to surgery, and I looked at my husband and I said, "What did I do to deserve this? I don't
Mhm.
understand." And of course, we don't do anything to deserve whatever it is.
Right, right.
But we do feel that.
Yes.
But yeah, anger is one of those. It's okay to go, "Huh," and then you go on, right?
Yeah. In these journeys, any and all human emotions are simply human
Hmm. Right.
and, to be expected.
Hmm.
And to a great extent,
Hmm.
validate them. I think that there's understanding to be gained
Hmm.
by looking at them,
Hmm.
caring for them.
Hmm.
It's,
Right.
and then we're starting to look at
Hmm.
how do I respond to that,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's what really matters.
Right, right. Yeah, you started by saying, that I have lots of energy and all that, and I really try to
Mhm.
do that. I will ramp myself up to do things like this, and then I'll probably go
Mhm.
take a nap. Um,
Yeah.
but it is, how are we going to deal with it? But I have so many people that, oh, you're always so positive, you're always so happy. No, people just
Yeah.
don't see it when I'm not.
Right.
But again, that's what, now my husband, he knows, and some of my friends know, oh, not a good day. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I try to not show. But folks, pity parties are perfectly fine.
Mm.
Just don't get stuck there.
What? Let me share a two-word phrase
Hmm.
and ask you to react to it.
Okay.
Productive lamenting.
Hmm. I like that. Because like we've been saying, it's healthy to feel those negative thoughts and emotions. And I think we need to remember it's healthy to feel those. When we don't, when we're, Pollyanna, when we're happy, 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 those emotions are still there.
Mm.
And what's going to happen is they're going to come in at really inappropriate times. And so yeah, acknowledge it productively. Okay, how am I going to deal with this?
Yeah.
What do I need to go on? All of those things, and that comes back to resilient, right?
Yeah.
What do I need to be able to get past this?
Right.
And
Right.
whether it's internal or external, what do we need?
Right. That's really part of what's behind in the book, in the Plan to Be Your Best approach.
Hmm.
It includes the 3 steps of resilience.
Hmm.
Tune in, plan, and then be your best.
Hmm.
Tune in to understand,
Hmm.
acknowledge, validate
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
feelings. Then moving into the plan step. All right,
Hmm.
what are my options now?
Hmm.
And then be your best is to
Hmm.
make a decision and
Right.
follow through
Hmm.
and apply. One
Right.
of the most effective ways to win back
Hmm.
the focus that pain takes away, the way
Hmm.
to win back energy and to move forward
Hmm.
using those 3 steps is for me to choose in the moment. I'm going to be thankful for something,
Hmm.
even all 13 scars,
Hmm.
even
Right.
even all the 7 surgeries.
Hmm. Hmm.
How does an attitude of gratitude fit into your life?
Hmm. We always have to be grateful. And sometimes it's something really small, and there are times
Hmm.
where, people will say, how you doing? And I say, well, I'm not looking up at 6 feet of dirt, so I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but, I have a lot of scars, lots of
Mhm,
scars. And are they ugly? Are they nasty? They're scars, right?
mhm,
And so, and we certainly wouldn't, it's not like we do those on purpose. But I also know that if I didn't have those ugly, nasty, horrific scars, I wouldn't be here. So in a
mhm.
way, you kind of love them, right? It's a little weird philosophy, but yeah, and I mean, some of them really were scars that saved my life. Some are,
Yeah.
some are other scars, like, where I had a port put in for treatment, things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, every scar I have saved my life.
Uh, and the reason to be thankful.
Hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Question for you. I've got a lot of questions for you. Um, how can people reach you?
So the easy way is, well, you can Google me. They're really, I think there's 3 Deb Kriers in the entire world, and so just look for the Deb Krier with the red hair.
Mm,
Um, but my website is tryingnottoDie.live.
mhm.
And so you can go there. You can find ways to connect with me there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. There I am, Deborah, Deborah. But yeah, you can find. And again, just look for the person with the red hair. But we also have a private Facebook group that I encourage anyone, whether you're on this journey or not, to join. We keep it private simply because I don't want the snake oil salesman, right? I've had those. You drink my protein drink and it will cure
Yeah.
you. Well, no, it won't.
No. Right.
And now I use, and what I do, I thank them, right? Because in their own way, they mean well, but not, they're not going to be part of our
Yeah.
Facebook group. Um, but, but yeah, like I've started posting, and we've had somebody who's done this for a while, humor tips.
Mhm.
But we also post inspiration, things like that. And I did post there today about the friend that we lost, because she was somebody who was part of the group.
Mhm.
And so hopefully we don't, it's not overly sad, but it is more inspiration and support.
Yes. Wonderful. And that encouragement, that inspiration, that support is
Hmm.
so needed. It really is. I
Hmm.
get it completely.
Hmm.
What's the name of the group?
TryingnottoDie.live.
Yeah.
And you'll
Yeah.
find links on our website to the Facebook group.
Wonderful. Wonderful. 5 questions to ask doctors. I wish there were certain questions I had asked,
Hmm.
especially early on,
Hmm.
particularly after the third surgery,
Hmm.
when the doctor said someday you're going to need a total knee replacement. But
Hmm.
I wish there are several questions
Hmm.
that I thought of since then that I wish I had
Hmm.
asked then.
Hmm.
What are some questions that are worth asking?
Well, of course, when you're dealing with cancer, you're scared to death. right? And so you don't want to ask any questions, you know.
Right.
And so one of the things that I do is I encourage people, especially for those first appointments, take somebody with you. Let them
Mm,
know the questions that you want answers to that are afraid to ask. But some of the questions are, what type of cancer do I have? What are the what is my treatment going to be?
mhm,
What is the outlook? What can I expect before, during, and after?
mm,
Right? Because we all think, oh, we're going to finish with treatment and everything is going to be better. No, it never is.
yeah.
And what can I expect? Right?
Mhm, mhm,
And so and those are scary, right?
yeah.
I didn't want to know those answers. And so then we're like the ostrich, right? I'm not, or we also assume that the doctor will just tell us.
Mhm,
No.
yeah.
That some of them will, some of them won't, but you are your own advocate. And if, as I said, you might need somebody else who is there advocating for you, but you have to ask those questions. They're not sometimes going to volunteer that information. And folks, Dr. Google is not your friend. If you Google whatever it is, all you're going to do is scare yourself half to death. Now, little bit later on, maybe you might want to do that, but go to trusted resources, and that's whether you're choosing
Mhm,
traditional or non-traditional types of treatment. Make sure that the information you're getting for whatever it is accurate. And AI, again, not your friend there either.
mhm.
Mm-mm.
Right, right. It can be and is
hmm
wrong at times,
hmm
without a doubt.
hmm
So to have a diagnosis or to be
hmm
told, all right, we
hmm
need to do surgery opens up a
hmm
world of
hmm
questions and
hmm
uncertainty. And not having answers
hmm
creates layers and layers
Right.
of stress.
hmm hmm and of course, the hard part about a lot of this is, say you have a test and you don't get the results for a while. So whether it's a day, whether it's a week, your brain goes to the worst place. And so try to not do that. It's going to happen, and
Yeah.
so it's okay. But it is a challenge, I think, to the medical community. And I know they're like every other place in the world. They are overworked and understaffed.
Mm,
But sometimes I think they do need to get us the results faster.
yeah.
And I had one that told me one time, well, it was okay, so we didn't send you the results. I said, oh no,
Oh,
unacceptable answer. I said, because my brain thought, it's so bad they don't want to tell me.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, but that comes back to the questions. How are you going to communicate with me? One of my doctors absolutely
Mhm,
loves the
mhm.
online portal. I can send him a message and he always responds the same day. One of my other
Wow.
doctors, it's off into never never land. So I don't use
Yeah,
that to communicate with them.
yeah, yeah. So without having those answers, that can
Mhm,
create that
mhm,
repetitive loop of
mhm,
thought,
mhm,
emotions, and
mhm,
basically more pain.
mhm,
How do you, if you when you find yourself in that loop,
mhm,
that storm, I
mhm,
call it a cyclone, a
mhm.
tempest, how do you get out of that?
You laugh,
Ah,
right?
yes.
And I try and do that all the time. I'm, like we said, I'm kind of one of those happy-go-lucky people. But laughter has physical
Yeah,
benefits.
yeah,
It raises certain levels of chemicals in your body, helps with your
yeah,
blood pressure, all sorts of things. And so it might be that I watched Big Bang Theory, or
yeah.
whatever it is. I remember way back on September 11th, I had a very stressful job, and we knew that we could have some very serious ramifications that were directly related to what had happened. And after I dealt with what we needed to deal with at work, I went home and watched probably 4 hours of I Love Lucy.
Ah,
Right? And so laugh. There is that saying, laughter is the best medicine. And I also try to make my caregivers laugh. What can I say to them to kind of make them, because they've got really, really hard jobs.
yeah.
And so what can I say to them to maybe lighten their load a bit too?
The laughter lowers the cortisol,
hmm
the
hmm
stress hormone.
Right.
And
Yep.
actually, have you ever? I love that, Deb.
A
Laugh. Have you
fake
ever?
laugh can do it too.
So, in fact, sometimes I'll reverse engineer
hmm
the way my mind is working. I'll go
Mhm.
ahead and smile even if I don't
Mhm.
feel like it,
Right.
because if I keep doing this,
Mhm.
when we flex
Mhm.
those muscles to
Mhm.
smile, that's
Mhm.
usually in reaction to the brain being
Mhm.
receiving something that is
Mhm.
happy or funny or
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
But I found if we can reverse
Mhm.
engineer that.
Mhm.
Flexing those muscles sends a signal back to the brain
Yeah.
saying,
Your brain
"Oh,
goes,
I'm
"Oh, I'm
I'm
happy." Mhm.
I'm happy."
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. Right.
There's a story I remember hearing about how people who are blind, who've never seen others react in
Mhm.
certain ways, they've never watched a football game, for example, and
Mhm.
see a football player make a touchdown
Mhm.
and raise their hands above their
Mhm.
head in celebration.
Mhm.
But when they celebrate,
Mhm.
innately, they
Mhm.
raise their hands as
Mhm.
if they just crossed the
Mhm.
goal line.
Right.
There's something about the
Mhm.
body's reaction.
Mhm.
So I've heard people say that, and I've done this in a stressful situation. I'll go ahead and spend a couple minutes with my arms raised,
Mhm.
and that
Right.
reverse
Mhm.
engineers
Mhm. Mhm.
confidence,
Right.
triumphant.
Right. Mhm. Mhm.
What else do
Well,
you do
and in a
to?
business aspect, there are power poses, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
before you go give a presentation that you're a little nervous about, you stand with your hands on your hips and you're just and again, your brain goes, "Oh, okay. We're powerful right now." So yeah, it's interesting how we can trick our brains like that.
Yes, yes. When you have perhaps just a brief moment with someone who has received a cancer
Mhm.
diagnosis, what would you say? What would be the first two or three things you might say simply to connect and
Mhm.
perhaps encourage them?
Mhm. First thing I say is I'm sorry. Because again, we want to acknowledge that this is horrible. And I'll be honest, if somebody is telling me, I am not the person that says, "Oh, it's going to be all right."
Mhm,
You're not given anything you can't get through because you get that enough from other people, right?
mhm.
I usually swear. I use that other F word. you know?
Right?
And I will tell them, well, and part of that is because I want them to know it's okay to be angry at this.
Yeah.
But then I will also say, you know, what can I do to help?
Mhm,
But then be specific. Do knowing who they are, do you need someone to go with you to an appointment? Whatever it is.
mhm.
Because if you're just, oh, let me know what I can do to help, our brain goes,
Yeah.
but be specific. But yeah, acknowledge that what they're going through is not good.
Right.
So and then you can be encouraging, right? Because we need, it's kind of like tricking our brain again, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, usually one of the first things I say is something bad.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because it's not good. It's not
Right.
good.
Yeah.
You're
When my doctor called to tell me that I had my third cancer, when the doctor pops up on your caller ID, you're like, oh, this is not good. Right. If they're
Mhm.
calling me, this can't be good. And so I picked up the phone and she didn't beat around the bush at all. She just says, well, you have papillary thyroid cancer. And I said, oh, hmm. you know, and, and she laughed and she said, that's why you will get through this just fine.
Yes, yes. How have you changed? I found that in a pain experience, a pain journey, on one hand, you can lose yourself
Mhm,
for various reasons.
mhm,
Your sense of identity can be shaken.
mhm.
But if you go through it a certain way, very
Mhm,
intentionally, you also find yourself.
mhm,
And you find that as I often say, and like to encourage people, that your best is greater than the pain.
mhm.
What's your experience been like?
It is kind of weird how, in some ways, this has been a positive, right? And I hope that I'm more tolerant with people.
Mhm.
I hope that I say thank you. One of the things that I really try to do is to tell people I love them. That's
Yeah,
only if it's real, right? It's not, hey, Rick, love ya.
yeah,
Okay. But if it's, and so really let them know that. Because we assume they know, and it'll startle people, right? If you've not always said that to them
yeah.
before, but it's okay to do that, and so I really try to do that. and I hope that I really do appreciate people more. I try to not be around the toxic people,
Mhm.
because that's a negative energy, right? And
Right.
we don't want
Right.
that. But yeah, I it's weird to say, but I hope it has made me a better person.
This is something that I've just got to say, it makes sense to me
Hmm.
to, and I've been writing about this in the book as I'm making progress, that
Hmm.
the way I've been thinking of it lately is to navigate this, to be on a path to strengthen my
Hmm.
resilience.
Hmm.
I've got to love more.
Hmm.
I've got to love
Hmm.
myself more.
Right.
I've got to love others
Hmm.
more. I've got to
Hmm.
love God more.
Hmm.
And to do, it's just been a
Hmm.
natural, it's been a
Hmm.
necessary byproduct of the experience
Hmm.
by being purposeful
Hmm.
through the journey.
Hmm. Right. And there is that saying: if you can't be anything, just be kind.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Let me just take a tangent for a moment. Dog shows. That
Yes.
must be that must be such a source of joy for you.
So we show beagles, the little Snoopy beagles.
Yeah,
I had never had a dog growing up and married a guy who, does dog shows. He had show dogs, and it's very strange. It's beauty contest for dogs, right? But I have a lot of fun. I have met some of the absolute most wonderful people in the world because of dog shows. And in fact, during this chat, one of them called, and I had to, mute the call real quick. But it's very bizarre, and but I really love it. But you don't know this. We have a new puppy. And so hopefully he's going to work out to be a show dog. But of course, we're already just, smitten with him and head over heels. And he's not quite 3 months old. But yeah, they're bizarre. But they're great fun too. And like I said, I've met some of that, and made some of the best relationships that I never
yeah.
would have if we weren't showing dogs.
I'll use this as a segue to your live
Hmm.
acronym. You're living.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
not holding back.
Right.
You're living
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
Tell us
Right.
about LIVE.
Well, actually, I have to open it here on my website. So, the trying not to die
Yeah.
is it that came from the fact that when we have something catastrophic that's going on,
Yeah.
especially something long term, we get so caught up in trying to not die
Yeah.
that we forget that we have to live.
Mhm.
And so we did make live an acronym, because I'm a marketing person, right? And so the L is that you are going to lead your tribe. Like I said, you're in charge. You
Mhm.
are the person. So you're going to lead your tribe. And I'm very much a believer that I am a warrior and I have my tribe. I know some people don't like that analogy, but for me, that's it. Because every warrior does not stand alone. They have their tribe. And so we're going to lead our tribe. We're going to invigorate our soul because we're going to put ourselves first because it is our life on the line.
Yeah.
We're going to voice our feelings. We've been talking about that. We have to be honest because only the truth is what is actionable for people. And then we're
Mhm.
going to elevate our mindset with the belief that no matter what, everything will be okay. Now, it might only be okay for a day, right? Or 50 years, who knows? But it's as we said, how are we going to be resilient? How are we going to elevate
Yeah.
our mind?
I love that. And you make the point that we all have our own unique resilience
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
our own unique resilience vocabulary,
Hmm.
our own unique set of
Right.
resilience words.
Hmm.
One of yours is warrior.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
connects with you,
Hmm.
and that's all that matters. Is that
Right. Right.
it connects with you.
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
got mine.
And what is it?
Well, I will say things such as even when I'm in the pit,
Hmm.
overwhelmed with pain,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I'll say my best days are ahead of me.
Hmm.
And I believe it makes sense in a
Hmm.
couple of ways. One is that I know that I'm going to seek to be my best,
Hmm.
and my best might only be
Hmm.
for a moment. It might be the way I bounce back from a blast
Mhm.
of intense pain,
Mhm.
or I might encourage somebody else.
Mhm.
So I know with confidence that I'm going to be my best
Mhm.
in the future. So
Mhm.
my best days are ahead of me.
Mhm.
That having even something a compelling future
Mhm.
is key to um, navigating to not
Mhm.
just survive something, not just
Mhm.
to be resilient, but also to thrive.
Mhm.
Have
Right.
not perhaps even more than a compelling
Mhm.
future, a fascinating
Mhm.
future.
Mhm.
The,
Mhm.
the, ever since I decided to redirect the book to plan
Mhm.
to be your best as you navigate
Mhm.
pain, and even
Mhm. Mhm.
meeting you, for example, because I started this
Mhm.
podcast, this has been fascinating
Mhm.
and
Right.
compelling. I
Mhm.
have a sense of purpose, and
Mhm.
there's energy that came from identifying
Mhm.
the purpose, and
Mhm.
there's energy that comes from everything that I do to fulfill the
Mhm.
purpose.
Mhm.
Your Tell me about your purpose, your sense of mission in life.
It is to help anyone who is on this journey.
You
And it's funny because back to my word warrior, somebody sent me something not long after my diagnosis, and it is
Mhm.
fate says to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. And the warrior responds, I am the storm. And like I said, some people, and I've been turned down for podcasts because they didn't like that word. I thought, well, you're not my people, right? And
Right.
and so that's, like we said, that's
A little bit of a pause in the connectivity here, I'm
heard people
sure.
don't like the word survivor. Right.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, some people don't like, there we go. Some people don't like the word survivor. Some people don't like the word warrior. Whatever it is, it's as you said, you have to find that word that's going to or phrase, that's going to get you through it. And so mine, I want people to know they're in charge. Advocate for
Right.
yourself. The doctor can only make suggestions. The medical practitioner,
Mhm.
or holistic or whatever it is, they're only going to make suggestions. You are the one who has to decide where you're going with this, and that decision might be, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Right.
It's your decision.
Right. What you're describing is empowering behind
Hmm.
the thought that I
Hmm.
often say, like a broken record, is that I'm a lion of intentionality. You're
Hmm.
describing different ways
Hmm.
of being intentional.
Hmm.
That means that's a reflection of your values, your
Hmm.
choices, your
Hmm.
own empowerment.
Hmm.
Your you're being a warrior.
Hmm.
I don't use fighting terms.
Hmm.
I'm always if I talk about fighting, I'm talking about fighting to not fighting the pain,
Hmm.
but fighting to go forward, to
Okay.
fighting
Okay.
for the
Hmm.
flow,
Hmm.
because to focus on the
Hmm.
pain, because of some of it is because of the 7 surgeries,
Hmm.
some of it is because of neurological
Hmm.
damage,
Hmm.
and there are over 20 pain sensations I've experienced. So
Hmm.
to whatever extent that I'm
Hmm.
focusing on that or
Hmm.
staying in that moment of
Hmm.
being overwhelmed, then it's more likely to trigger more pain
Mhm.
and
Right.
and bring me down.
Mhm.
So I fight. The only term, the only way I use the term
Mhm.
fight is to fight forward, to go
Mhm.
with the flow.
Mhm. I love
Um,
that. Mhm.
and so that's it's just is what
Mhm.
works for me.
Mhm.
And we
Right.
need, I believe, we're all best served for our own unique
Mhm.
resilience is to find
Mhm.
and um, and own what works for
Mhm.
you.
Right. And it might be a phrase from a song. It might be a favorite
Yeah,
poem. Whatever it is, and for some people then it's kind of their mantra, right? Especially when things are not going the way you want, they just kind of repeat these things, and whether
yeah,
you've got it on your mirror or your computer, whatever it is. And I'm a big believer that music is definitely
yeah.
one of those things that helps us out of these things. So find your playlist. What are you going to listen to that's going to uplift your soul?
So these are things, this is wonderful. These are things in your resilience toolkit.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just curious, what kind of music do you like to listen to?
Right. Yeah. One of the songs that I listen to, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. Rachel Patton is who sings it,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
"This Is My Fight Song," right?
Yes. Yeah.
I also, now I'm a country girl at heart, and so I love Garth Brooks' "The Dance." right?
Yeah.
I have to look over here. Our lives are better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd had to have missed the dance,
Yeah.
right?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. This has been absolutely fantastic, Deb. Thank you so much. One of the things that I found, like for example, this morning has been especially painful for me,
Mm,
but I've focused on looking forward to our
mhm,
conversation because what I focus on is what I
mhm,
experience.
mhm. Right, right.
When
We're
I focus,
manifesting, if you want to use that.
right.
Mhm,
So this will be um, this is a time when I am talking about resilience, and therefore I'm
mhm,
focusing on resilience,
mhm,
and therefore I'm experiencing
mhm,
resilience.
mhm,
I'm we're talking about, and I'm
mhm,
aware of, and I'm taking in your positivity, your positive energy.
mhm,
Therefore, I'm experiencing
mhm,
positive energy. So what we focus on matters so greatly.
mhm. Right. I'm just absolutely delighted that I was able to share positive energy with you.
Thank you so much for that. You're a true blessing. You're a wonderful blessing.
This yes, it has been such a delight to get to know you.
One or two thoughts that you'd like to conclude our time together with?
You are in charge. This is
Yeah.
your life. And so make sure that you're making the decisions. Make them educated decisions, right? Like we said, not Dr. Google. And figure out where you're going. I tell people I don't want my headstone to say, "I wish I would have." Don't have a bucket list. You might have a list of things you want to do, but don't think, "Oh, I'll do that in 10 years." No, do things while you can. And I had somebody that said one time that they wanted to tour the world, but they knew they couldn't afford to. And I said, "Okay, there's museums, there's movies, what's going to work, and get rid of that negative. you know we don't need to be listening to the news 24 hours a day. um and I have music on all the time. I have very uplifting music that is on, except when I'm on things like this, that just kind of, like I said, music's very important to me. So how are we going to do that? But this is your life. You need to live it the way you want to live it.
Thank you so much for that. And for those of you who are watching, whether you're live or with the recording, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of Plan to Be Your Best Live. Hopefully, this has been encouraging, insightful, something that's been feeding your own unique resilience. Practice it. There's no perfection in resilience, but in the practicing, you'll realize as time goes by that your best is greater than the pain
Mm.
and your best days are ahead of you. Deb, thanks again. And I'll look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, most definitely.
Take good care now.
You too.